Hello, everybody. Welcome to Heidbangers. I am Matty, joined tonight on what is Mental Health Awareness Week by Neil and Gordon. Neil, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, mate. Yeah, thank you. Gordon, how about you?
Yeah, aye, I'm good actually. Pretty good. Thank you. I was
Good.
going to say how are you, but he's just asked that, so there's no point in me asking it
Aye, I don't know.
unless it's changed in the last
No,
4 seconds.
I've found myself suddenly very frustrated. Not,
Well, last then, how are you, mate?
I'm all right. Aye. So that actually, it is actually a good question to ask, considering this is like our how's it going episode, isn't it? Like the last few, we've had a topic sort of specifically, but this one was really just a check in with each other, see how we're doing. It's been a couple of weeks since we've recorded,
Yeah, it's been a while.
and you know, I think the whole point of having a podcast like this one is to encourage just like a normal conversation about mental health and being able to talk about how you actually are feeling. Because the temptation always, when you get asked that "how are you doing" question, is to say "I'm good" or "I'm all right," because you feel that's the answer that people want to hear.
Exactly.
That's an interesting point because I've consciously in the past tried not to answer with that. But have you ever found when you try to answer it honestly, when you are feeling shit, that you feel like you can't? Because then, say like it's just somebody at work, right? So somebody at work, you go on a meeting or a call, and you know them, you're acquaintances, right? You're work colleagues, but you're not like best pals with them. And they ask you how you are, and you've just came off another meeting, or you've just done something, you feel really fucking shit, and you can't be arsed. And they ask you, like, I'm going to be honest here. But then I start, like, I've done it, and I've started saying, actually, I'm pretty peed off. And then you can see sometimes the reaction. They're like, I wasn't expecting that.
For their face.
Aye, they were just expecting because it's almost like a, what is it, like a, something that
It's
just
not
people
like
say, like a
rhetorical.
Isn't it quite a rhetorical? But I know, like, it is just basically like a standard thing people do. They are, sometimes they aren't even interested in how you actually are. But they're just doing it. So sometimes I feel a bit awkward when you actually start telling them, then you just got to kind of gauge the reaction, how far you're going to actually take it. Some people are really receptive, and then you can actually get into the conversation around it. But yeah, I just found that interesting when you said that there. That I've kind of noticed that when people ask that, they do expect you just to go, "Aye, okay," and then you move on.
I used to use it when I was like, if I was struggling and like at the heights of my lows, and I would be struggling, and people would be like, "You're right," and I'm like, "How are you?" And I'd be like, "I'm fine," but I would deflect it straight away, like back to them, like, and I'd have something so they, even if they thought I was struggling, or they asked me that because I was, and they could see it, I would just deflect it back to them, like, "I am fine. How's your work?" Or "Did you go to that gig you were going to?" Do you know what I mean? Just to straight away take any like focus off me and back to them. So I used it as like a defense mechanism. If like I'd be like, "I'm fine." But I do know, like, when like I've asked the question, "How are you?" and then you're thinking, "I'm open." Like, what if they say they're no fine? What do I say at that point? So it's like a double-edged one. Do you know what I mean? You want to help people, but at the same point, you're like, "Oh man, what's going to be the action if I do need to help them?"
What has been your reaction when folk have said that they're not great?
It's just been trying, like, I think the big thing is like communicating, like talking and listening, and that's what like therapy is. Like, I'm sort of like going through like a therapy thing just now, and I was like, no arguing. I wasn't demeaning her job, just doing a brilliant job, especially with me. But I was like, it's just, I was like, I've argued with therapists before, I've argued with all therapists, but I was like,
you're a glutton for punishment, eh?
I know,
and arguing as well.
Exactly, aye. No, who says that? Not me.
Oh,
but,
no.
I would, I don't know. I would be like, the argument, the most recent one was, it wasn't even an argument. I was at a point, they were like, "What are you looking for?" or "Who do you want to like?" I was like, therapy, it's just like, all it is a conversation. Talk, listen, like, and anybody can do that. And I didn't mean to like demean their job or that, do you know what I mean? But I was like, anybody can do that. And I think that's the point nowadays, like, when you're asking people how they are, it's just a case of like being prepared. If they're not right, what do you do? Like, ask them. And it doesn't even, it could be, I suppose one way of looking at it is like, if somebody was to say, if you were to say somebody at the coffee machine in the morning, "How are you?" and they're like, "Oh, a nightmare. A tire blew on my car coming in," you would show concern about that, And I suppose it's the same way, adjusting that concern to like, if somebody says, I'm struggling mentally, do you know what I mean? They could be like, oh no, they're not going to say that. But if they talk about, even if you've not got a clue about cards, you'd be like, oh, I'm sorry hearing that. Are you all right? So I suppose it's just adapting it in that way. And that's like stigma as well, I suppose. The more conversations we have, then the better it is. But I don't know if that really answered the question, but aye.
Do you find that?
Aye, so don't follow it with your therapist.
Don't follow it with your therapist. Gordon, do you find that when somebody says something like that to you, that you go into, or you to use like a wanky corporate phrase, but solution mode? Because I found like when what I mean by that is when folk used to, it's probably changed over the years now, but if somebody said to me, oh, like, this is bothering me, I would try to think a way for them to fix it. And so you spend like 5 minutes sort of saying, but what if you tried this, or what if you tried that? But that's no always, I don't think, the best solution. Are you experienced that, Gordon?
I have, and I think it depends on the person you're talking to and how the conversation goes. Because I think I used to, when I was less an experienced human being, if way to put it, I would try and do that, because that's what you feel like you should do, right? Someone's quite clearly trying to offload on you and potentially showing signs of looking for help. But I more recently, I just try and listen and not do that. But if the conversation gets to a point where it's quite obvious that they are looking for advice, then, but it's difficult. Like you're walking on. Sometimes you're walking on eggshells, because the great thing about mental health awareness is much better than it used to be, but it also sometimes makes things a bit trickier because you overthink it, because it's such a you've got more of awareness of it, so you're like, I can't say the wrong thing here, so I didn't want to upset this person. Whereas I think before, when it wasn't such an awareness, people you would just think were a bit, I don't know, you'd have it in your mind that they were a bit more resilient than, because everybody just expected everybody to be resilient. And now that the whole mental health awareness thing is more out in the open, you consciously are a bit more cautious around how you approach those conversations and how you deal with them. But I have I think you just, all you got to do is, in my opinion, when you just got to be engaged with the person and actually show that you're listening, and that you actually give some level of shit about what it is that they're talking about. Because I've had it where I've went into work and someone's asked me how am I doing, and just like you're saying, like, oh, I fucking had a shit morning, I missed the train, or it was late, blah blah, and you can just tell they're not even, like, they've asked a question and then they're just like going and then leaving hardly even looking at you and stuff, and you just feel like it just makes you feel even shitter. So that like, didn't do that is it's what I'm getting at. Just didn't fucking do that. At least listen to the person. If you've no solutions, if you've no advice to give, I think that's completely fine. But actually listen and act like you care, because sometimes that just makes someone's day, that they can offload on you and know that you're there to, if it ever needs to happen again, for them to vent and go, right, well, actually, it's all right. Even I think like validation as well. Like, just not even give them a solution, just going, that fucking happened to me and I felt shit and all, like, when they worry about it. That I think that can help a lot.
Definitely. Listening, I think, and paying attention. I think that's like a big, massive thing. And it's like not being scared of like what they're going to say to you, or that, just like, there's only so much that we can do, like, without being mental health experts. But it's like signposting people then if they are struggling to do what it is. But it reminds me of that thing where, I don't know if I mentioned it before, Jerry Seinfeld, the comedians in cars getting coffees. There's one with him and Eddie Murphy, and it's brilliant. Like, Jerry Seinfeld's driving about and they see two homeless folk. And Jerry Seinfeld's like, you know what's brilliant? One of them is giving everyone advice. And it is that sort of like observation with it. And that's all it is, like, people talking, it's just one person's giving them advice, and he's obviously thinking, like, how can a homeless person be given like advice? But it's true, we can all do it. And it is that it's listening. And I think it's maybe even like wording it differently. I used to work in Comet when it was at the Maybury, the big one, big fancy one, and I was like really good at sales. you would see the people that were like, or the young team and that going about selling stuff, and they'd be like going up to customers, "Are you all right?" And customers would just switch off. And I was like speaking on managers, goes, "Look, like my approach is totally different. Like I'd ask them open questions, but I went up to a customer and I was like, 'Is that your elephant in the car park event?' And the boy's like, 'Oh, I'm all right, I'm all right,' and he wasn't even paying attention. It's just that automatic, like, do you know what I mean? It's like the elephant, like. It's just like, oh, I'm all right. It's all right. I'm just looking. It's like, you're not even paying attention, mate.
You'd have got a fright if said, "Aye, that is my elephant. My
I
elephant."
know. I was like, no way. Like shit all over the van, so you better get it cleaned up. But it is like engaging it, and it's like just I suppose if you're asking questions, it's like don't be scared of what people are going to say. One thing I've noticed I've done quite a lot as well is people will be because I don't know if I'm too vocal about mental health or my mental health, but because of that, so people will be saying stuff to me, and I don't mind it. And what I've noticed I've said a lot though is like when people are saying stuff to me, it's like, what would you, if I was saying this to you, what advice would you give to me? Because some people be saying like I feel like horrible, or like my job, I'm struggling with my job and my relationship and stuff like that. And I would say, well, if I was saying that to you, what would you say to me? And they would be like, well, I would say to you, like, do this or do that, do this. Do you know? So people sometimes know what an answer is.
Mm-hmm.
They want to hear it from someone else, but they probably could hear it from themselves as well, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And it's like we're harder on ourselves than we are on ever like anybody else. But I'm definitely harder on myself than like anybody else. Do you know what I mean?
What about you, Mike? Sorry, I was going to say, what about you? Like, how do you approach when people ask you for advice and that?
I think try to listen. That's the thing I've learned the most. I think where I struggled with initially is a lot of like my early working life was I did a lot of training on coaching. Like that was kind of the route that I took through, like into management. Was all so you do loads of open questions, like how do you get people to think of solutions themselves, and that's kind of what coaching is all about. But coaching is different from listening to somebody who's telling you they're not doing great, because that person's maybe not actually needing coach. They just need like a sympathetic ear. And so that was the trouble I would have initially. I think it would frustrate people if I was having that conversation with them, because sometimes they're not wanting you to tell them how to fix it, or you know they're not even wanting you to help them find out how to fix it. They just want somebody to know they've had a shit day, to get it off their chest, and then to go,
to listen.
Aye, that must have been shit. I can see why you're upset. That's all. That's maybe all they need that day. And if you're sitting going, well, what could you have done differently? Like, what could you have said there? Like, fuck. Because I kid myself, there are times when I'm in a fucking right bad mood, and like it doesn't happen often. I'm no particularly angry person by nature, but there are times when I'm in a bad mood, and I know how to get out of a bad mood. But sometimes, with the best one in the world, I just want to be angry for the wee while. I just want to fight the world.
It's human, eh?
Aye, and there's nothing that's more annoying when somebody says, "Oh, I can cheer up," or they start giving you the solutions. Like, "Oh, you should just do that. You should just do that." And that bit about you saying, Neil, like about wanting somebody else to say it for you, because sometimes you need that as well, because you know the answer, but you didn't really want to admit it to yourself. Sometimes it takes somebody else saying it. So now when somebody's annoyed or they're upset or they're having a hard time, I try to listen and empathise. That's sort of my starting point with it, and then see where the conversation goes. The other thing that I have to really work, or had to really work on, was not judging, and by that is like having a sense of perspective, because things that might seem trivial to us or to me, when somebody comes and says it's a problem, that might be the biggest issue in the world to them. And you see they're upset and you ask them why, and they say it, and you're like, internally you'd be going, fucking hell, I felt like I wish that was all I had to worry about. But you couldn't go back to the person and say that. So you have to, it is about empathising and just understanding that some things will be important to other people that aren't important to you. And if you're going to be there for them, you have to adapt how you feel about it and sort of be them.
That's like the pricks that always go, "Oh, they're lucky, all these kids are lucky they weren't born during the war." No, the rest of it, it's like, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, that's the exact opposite of that. These folk that just think everybody should just get on with everything because they aren't in World War II. And it's like, obviously it would have been horrendous. It was utter shit, but doesn't validate that no one else has any other problems in the world because they should be lucky that they weren't born in World War II. It's just doesn't work like that. But it's quite so. Do you feel like you guys feel like there's a stark difference in how you deal? So everyone we just kind of said there, where like, so for example, like your colleagues or people you work with or acquaintances or whatever, and then like your family. Because I feel like when I'm thinking about it, completely being honest and frank and holding my hands up, I definitely deal with people that I don't know as well in those situations better than I do with my wife and my kids at times.
100%.
Not all the time, but it's just like I find it so much harder. And I don't know, I can't quite compute in my head why that is. I don't know if it's because I feel like I don't know if I'm like braver, I feel like I've got the right or something ridiculous like that I can be more pissed off and less tolerant of my family, which and by right should be the opposite way around.
Correct.
But isn't it?
It's a brilliant observation, Gordon, because I've had that chat. It's actually not caused arguments, right? But so just to kind of totally kind of open and honest about things here. So my youngest daughter is home educated, had real problems with anxiety at school, and initially I was like, just need to take her in. She's still at school. You can't not go to school. And being like really sort of like firm, and I would get annoyed with Jane because she'd be like, but you didn't understand. She's not well. I think she was like, Jane said wanted, she's like, see that was somebody in your work. What would you say to them? I was like, take time off. It wouldn't even cross my mind for it to be anything other than look after yourself and take a break. And that was like a huge eye opener for me. And I was like, why have I pushing something like I love dearly into a situation that's clearly making them upset, clearly damaging their health? And it's because it's family, and you think that was the way I was parented. Because I remember being no feeling well, I get told, well, you need to go in, and she'd go to school. You think, well, I did it, and that was how it worked. And that's no slight on my parents. They brought me up brilliantly, I think. But it's a weird thing because I had, like I said, if that had been a colleague, but it's funny when you said it, Gordon, as soon as you started saying that, I was like, 100% recognise that.
It just actually clicked when you said there though about like your parents and how you were brought up, and I wonder if it is almost like social conditioning, right? Like we are socially conditioned to from our parents and their parents to parent in a certain way, or be a husband in a certain way, or a partner in a certain way. Whereas at workplaces, like you're saying, you go through coaching courses when you become a manager and all this kind of stuff. You're told to do it this way, and you've got to be. And like, if you're a half decent person, you're probably got to do that anyway. Yeah. But I think there is a huge element of that social side of it where we have been conditioned. Why can I not say that now? I cannot say the word conditioned. Conditioned. Fucking hell. That's really bad. I've got Tourette's or something. I know that's how I know it's not how it works, but now I can say fuck and shit and things like that a lot more frequent if I. Which is a horrible disease, by the way. I'm not making fun of it. Yeah, sorry, I went on a tangent because I couldn't speak.
Is it a disease or a condition, though?
I don't know.
Condition.
No idea. I know. How do you see that, like that difference between who speaking to?
I don't know. I've never really thought about it, but it is probably like if you think about like the people like I would probably struggle like myself primarily, then maybe like my family, then friends, and then so it does probably like. And I don't know if you feel like you feel more responsible, you know, like for your family, so you want them to put on a brave face because that's what you would be doing. I don't know. It is a really interesting point in that, and it is. I think it is like the way my family, like parents, were like hardworking, like absolute working class. You know what I mean? And it's that thing where like if I'm not well, I'd still go to work, but I wouldn't expect anybody who works under me to do that. Do you know what I mean? Or same with, like, if they were struggling mentally, I would be like, you need to take time off for this. I'd be like, nah, I'm just going to like try and battle through it. And that is that thing with this condition. So we probably like treat ourselves the worst, then our like immediate family. Like, I don't mean the worst, but we probably treat other people better than what we treat ourselves and what we treat like our family and that. But I never really thought about it until just now.
It is like a really weird thing because I would say even with friends, friends you would kind of kick into that mode where you're like, right, you need to be like listening, be there for them. I'd love to know the answer to that, Gordon. It's one that I'm probably going to play through my head for a while now to try and figure out
I'm actually starting,
why
like,
it would
right
be
now,
different.
feeling loads of guilt because I'm thinking, even like speaking to you guys in like the group chat we've got and stuff. I think I'm genuinely nicer to all you than that I'm my own family. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, genuinely, it's like hitting me right now like a 10-ton truck. And I'm like, what? Why am I fucking like that? Why am I such a dick to them? And I'm not a dick to them, but I can be. And again, I'm probably not as forgiving. I'm not as understanding. I'm not as open with them as I don't know if it's like because I'm like, I don't know. I'm no wanting to open a can of worms on gender and masculinity and all that kind of stuff, but
Do it.
being the man of the house, being like, you feel, again, it's that social. I'm not even going to try to say the word because I'm going to make a cunt again. It's that thing where I feel like I'm supposed to be the rock. I'm supposed to be telling everybody what they're supposed to do and guiding them through this and guiding them through that. But doing it in such a way that they have to listen to me and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to process it in my brain, and I've came to this realization. I do feel quite a massive amount of guilt right now.
I think there's also the sense that there are like your family's a reflection of you as well to an extent, or that's the feeling, and that people would judge you on the way that you bring up your kids. Like I know for the whole home educating thing, I found that really difficult to start talking to friends about because folk didn't always understand it.
Nah, they would be judging you on it as well. They'd be like, "What are you doing that for?" Or they wouldn't be saying that to your face, probably, but you know they would definitely be thinking it.
Aye, but no, everybody, because some of them are really, really supportive of it and try to understand as well. But you definitely, like, I remember worrying about speaking only with mum and dad about it. For example, mum and dad always try to push me to go like to further education. So like I went to college for about 2 months and then went, fuck this, no for me. Went into full time employment and that kind of chose that path. But both my sisters got degrees and stuff like that. Mum and dad always valued that highly. And so when you're thinking, right, because the question always asks how the kids get on at school, and I dreaded that question coming up. And I could be like, mum and dad will listen to this and they'll be like, oh, you could always talk to us about it. And I did. But even though I knew that they wouldn't be at least, but I don't think they would behind my back either, but at least to my face they would be really, really understanding. And I think they would behind closed doors as well because they're good people. But having that, just like, how am I going to say this and don't feel like I've let everybody down or I've let my daughter down by not making them go to school. And actually, deep down it's absolutely the right thing to do. But as a human being and for our education, to get educated, being at home and doing it here is infinitely more efficient than putting her in an environment where she couldn't learn.
No.
But you worry about how people will interpret that, how they'll judge you, whether you think, oh, you're just a soft touch, you should have just made them go. Like, and you get that I would have been dragged to the school, or I would have just taken them in. And trust me, we tried it. Like, and I reckon if you ever had to try and drag a kid kicking and screaming out the house to get to school, and again, go back to thinking, would you drag one of your team at work and kicking and screaming because they didn't want to come in? Right, and again, kids have tantrums and all the rest. It's not quite comparing apples with apples, right? But it's like you go through that, you try it because you feel like you have to. It's horrendous, and then you just think folk are going to think I failed here, and that we're taking an easy option. And trust me, it's no an easy option. It's like one of the hardest decisions you can make, and you have to get in touch with like the school. You have to persuade them it's the right thing to do, and
it's quite an unknown as well, right?
Yeah, and the time it takes to get to that point. But even then, try to explain. And I'm not going to make this about home educating my daughter. I appreciate kind of offering a wee tangent here, but you try to explain like you can't sit down and do like a curriculum. Here's like, standard grade maths. The doctor exam no work. So what you have to do is find like experience, get them doing things like well, I guess I spoke about it before. We took her down to London to see To Kill a Mockingbird because her favorite actor was in it. So she got to meet him. But before you did that, she said, well, you need to read the play. Let's do that. She made like a wee model character. So it's like you find other avenues to connect, to educate, to give experience and learn through doing stuff. That works much better than her sitting trying to kind of figure out from a textbook or going online onto Google or BBC Bite Size or whatever. But trying to get other folk to understand that or believe in yourself that other folk will understand it when you tell them is difficult, and you like it's hard.
Did you find a change in other people's mindsets after COVID? Because everybody had to do it.
COVID was a big help on that respect. And I think what a lot of parents found as well was that there was loads of kids that didn't want to go back into school after I said didn't want to, right? That makes it sound like it's the choice, right? I said they didn't want to. They found it difficult to do it because whatever anxieties that they had built up and they'd been used to being at home and all the rest of it. So that definitely made it easier.
Because I'm definitely more understanding of your situation with your daughter now, because I genuinely found that my youngest Finn, he like massively came on leaps and bounds when he was homeschooled during COVID. Like he benefited from it hugely. And I think it all depends, and that's what people got to understand. It all depends on the kid. It all depends on the circumstances, how they react to certain things. Like you're saying, the way you're approaching the learning is all different. Everybody learns in a different way. Some people prefer to read a bit of text. Some people prefer to see a picture. Some people prefer to actually practically do stuff. It's like you can't be judging everybody based on one rule that everybody has to go to school and learn the same thing. I think the curriculum at school is bullshit a lot of the time, to be honest. And I understand that because I've done it, and seeing my kids do it, like how kids are I think we're going to be a tangent here, but how kids still only taught about mortgages and pensions and all that kind of stuff is mind fucking boggling. Well, actually, I know why. It's because the governments didn't want them to know that, because then they'll understand and get the better out of it, and the governments want to get it in their fucking pockets. But anywho.
Aye. And the world's different. This is another thing to bear in mind. So the world's different now that we grew up probably at an age where you were educated to go into finance or a particular profession that existed. Kids now, like you look at how many of them just forge their own path. Like they come in, they decide, they've got the world at their fingertips on their phones. So you've got folk who make like careers out of YouTube or like Instagram, or they make stuff and sell it. It's just they're able to kind of go and do things themselves without like the constructs of a 9-to-5 office job that was the norm for our generations. Like I don't think school necessarily teaches them for that these days.
And even like stuff, I don't think school does enough for like even like relationships and that. Do you know what I mean? They, like teach kids. I don't know if like boys get taught to like respect like girls in that at school. I know like that, and it's a very much like I know to teach them sex education and stuff, but it's just even the basics like relationships and like trust and respect and that they never get. And it's like algebra, like it's like the age old joke, but there's like I never gone and I've never used algebra, but that's true. Like what about mortgages and stuff, like credit cards and finance and like other subjects that will be like that are going to like give people like a proper like go at it. You know what I mean? The young people are proper go at it. That's what we need.
These are the things that will stress them out in older age as well. You know, as they kind of get on, like not being able to manage money is a huge contributor to stress and
definitely
anxiety and depression and all the
Society,
rest of it. So
don't we fucking know it?
I know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take it off on a tangent about home educating. It was just they come up, and I should probably be clear because I know my mum and dad are listening, is that they would totally have understood. You know, that it was my barrier rather than theirs. Like,
you can tell us how you really feel when we stop recording that.
Texting you now. No, like I know because I know how my mum especially would feel when she would hear that, and she'd be like, "Oh, you definitely could have." I should feel guilty about it, and she shouldn't feel guilty. Like they don't control how I feel about these things. That's all on me.
But that's a trait, I suppose. Like your parents, like you told, or like it's the people that are close by, like parents or like family, and that they'll still be by you, like no matter what. Usually, well, it depends. Like if you like message them to say, by the way, I'm a serial killer, and I've got like 14 people in my garden, they'd be like, I don't like Matt, maybe they'll stick by you that way. But do you know what I mean? I suppose we like undervalue how much it is, and that's like a trait that we would have for like our kids, families. Do you know what I mean? And even though we're saying we're pushing them, we've still got that thing where like we would still be like backing them up. You know, like the majority of the time, depending on what they did, no matter what they did.
Aye, and I think probably your kids will know you're the safety net for them. Really, you know, push comes to shove, that it's you that they would turn to for stuff when they need help. For money.
Taxi.
For money, that never changes. That's the other thing my mum and dad would tell you. I suppose like the other thing we just goes back to what opened my eyes and changing my attitude to the school thing was my oldest daughter left school with virtually no qualifications, and I would get on her all the time saying, like, you're not getting a good job, like you need to get unless you put hours in at work and get the head down, you're going to end up, and then this is no disrespect to anybody that does the job, but like you'll be working checkout at Tesco or you know, doing the parcels at Amazon or in the hairdressers or whatever, like, you know, all very valuable jobs, and I genuinely don't mean that as disrespectful, but the point I was trying to make is that the choice you have is limited.
Yeah, it's limited.
And then she left school 16, got a job that was on double what I started working on full time, like, and she's absolutely laughing. She'll get qualifications through her work and everything. So she's just like straight out of school, no qualifications, straight in a good job. And then there's a career there for her. And I'm like, well, that's me telling her. It shows back. And as maybe I should have backed her more as well. Like, I just and trusted that she'd be all right. Because,
I don't think it means as much anymore, like academics. Certain jobs it does, obviously, right? There's like a doctor and that. You need to be able to fucking brain surgeon. You can't just come straight to school at 16 and be a brain surgeon, obviously. But I think that's testament to the shift to things like mental health awareness and stuff, and people being more empathetic. That people are looking for good people rather than good academics. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that makes a huge difference. I've seen that. So I've been really lucky to everywhere I've worked. And I've been quite selective with it, actually, consciously through all my career after my first job, which was a full-time job, which was a nightmare, to make sure that I was being hired because they liked me as a person, not because of what a piece of paper said. And I think that there is a bit of a shift, in Britain, I don't know about everybody else, but definitely I think there's a bit of a shift that way. I think that helps people. So I think there's a big onus. I say that to my oldest laddie, like, and my daughter, actually, both. One's left school, one's about to leave school, and one's at college. One wants to go to college, but he wants to do like a trade job. And I said the same conversation as you, Matt, like, give yourself as many options as you can, because they want you to have the best life you can have and have a job that you enjoy rather than something you feel like you have to do because you have to make money and you hate it and all the rest of it. But I've because I know that academically it's not as important now, I've not really pushed to be like, you have to go to university and you have to do this and that. do what you need to do, but as long as you put effort in it, and as long as you like it, and you go and give it a right good go, you'll manage. Yeah, I think a lot of people will manage. Yeah.
Neil, I'm going to ask you again. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I feel all right. I did feel it like, and it's that. I suppose it depends when you get asked that. Who asks you that depends on what maybe your answer is. You know what I mean? Because you're maybe worried about offloading it to the wrong person. But I've had definitely had struggles recently, more like downs than ups. I would say just for like a change of circumstances, and it is like feeling it sometimes. It just creeps up on you like a ninja, and like gives you a doom. Do you know what I mean? When you least expect it. But this moment, I feel like I felt better today than I did like over the weekend. But it's just that weird thing when it just creeps up on you, you know, like unassuming, catches you off guard. Doing the stuff for the changing and supporting our supporters Easter Road was good. The walk and talk and stuff, that's good. You just got a bunch of guys just like talking about anything. Do you know what I mean? They don't have to be Hibs fans, because I know this isn't a Hibs podcast. We've got a guy that comes along who's like American, never been to a Hibs game in his life. He might never go either, which isn't a bad thing, to be honest with you. Like, I'd be like, didn't come. But do you know what I mean? But he comes along for that like social interaction to help himself. You know what I mean? So that's good. And stuff like that helps. And that is going back to the whole like just chatting, listening to people, and then giving them like advice. But I'm conscious as well though, when I'm in situations, I hate to be somebody that would say, well, oh, this is what I did, or this is medication I've taken, or this is like counselling that I've done, because everything's different for everybody. Do you know what I mean?
I thought,
so it's like,
sorry, Neil. I was just going to say,
no.
You seem like every time I speak to you, you've got something on. Like you're always mega busy. Do you like deliberately do that as a coping mechanism? Keep yourself busy all the time?
Oh, definitely. So like circumstances that have changed, so I've got like more time on my hands. But if I didn't have that, I'm terrible overthinking. So I would just be like sitting, and there has been times I'll do that, but I'll just sit and like do nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it can like make me feel far worse. And even it's good to sort of keep myself busy and interacting with people in that way. Because if not, like and it's weird, I've totally lost like motivation to like watch telly and read and write. I've actually got my writing motivation back, but see, when it comes to like Succession, I know what happens in it. I love it, but because like I'm like no, like me and my wife are separated, so you miss that sort of like, you know, when you're sitting on the sofa watching something with somebody, and even though you know talking, you can talk about the end of it. Do you know what I mean? So I've not got that just now, and it's just sort of like, so I know what's I love Succession. I know all the spoilers and that, and I will catch up with it, but I've just got no motivation to watch it. And it's weird, like how can you be motivated to watch telly? So it's good to keep myself busy doing other stuff, because if not, I'll just be like staring at the walls thinking, right, do you know what I mean? This is like, I don't know, you just sort of like overthinking stuff, and then it gets like worse than what it could be. So it's good just to like keep busy, but then it can't come at the detriment of like physical and mental health. And sometimes I feel that recently, like I could get up at like 5 in the morning and I'm getting in at like 9 at night, and like 5 days a week, and the weekends and that as well. See the kids, football, maybe go out or that, go to concerts, and before you know it, you're like, I actually haven't got a clue, you know, what I'm doing or who I am. So it is good to keep myself busy, but I'm just conscious that I'm like keeping myself too busy. But yeah,
I was going to ask that actually. Like, do you think that you're stopping yourself from? And I'm not doing this thing where I'm giving you advice or a solution, by the way. I'm just literally asking the question. Do you know, like, because I would think, because I think I've never really been like that, but like my wife's dad, he's like that. He's had quite a lot of like bad things happening in his life, and he just is always doing something. The guy can't sit still. And I've said that to my wife a few times. It's like, why is he like always just on the go, man? He's got to slow down. He's getting old and that. She's like, I just didn't think he can. Like if he does and he sits and thinks about stuff, then he'll not be able to handle it. So he just constantly keeps himself busy. But then I'm like, he's never really facing it. He's just almost like pushing it away. And it's always got to keep coming back. It's never going to go fully away. It's like, at what point do you feel like you have to like take it on, if at all?
No, and I suppose it's a really good way to look at it. Like, you can invest like your time in doing stuff to keep busy, but then there's other stuff that I'll be putting off and like just sort of delaying it and denying myself in that as well. So I suppose it's making the most of the time. I was listening to Wrestlers Natives podcast, and Gordon Smart was talking about a book about procrastination. I'm so bad at that. When it comes to writing and stuff, and even reading now, I've lost interest for that. And it's like, if you get that spark back, like stop putting off this stuff. I'm really bad at that. Like I've got a to-do list. I've got post-it notes, and I'll take a photo of them, and it's like hundreds of post-it notes. But it's like if I can get in like good habits that I've got in it now and keeping myself busy, then you appreciate, like, if I've got like tomorrow night and Friday night, I'll have like stuff to do. So then I can maybe try and watch like stuff on telly, like Guilt, for instance, 4 episodes. I could blitz that in 2 nights and do. But if not, if I didn't have that, I could just be sitting staring at the walls, and then I'm like, oh, my life's terrible. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
It's like, woe is me. But it's like I'm a lot more fortunate than other people just now. Do you know what I mean? So it's just so. But yeah, keeping myself busy, because if not, then I'd probably struggle a lot more than what I have.
Mm. You, sorry, Matt, you go.
I was going to ask you, Gordon, if you're someone that keeps yourself busy, or do you like to have a wee bit of downtime and just reflect?
I fucking love downtime if I can get it. I will just sit there and I actually just love silence, and like that's what I've started getting really big into, like hill walking and doing Monroes and stuff like that, and do it with a couple of mates, and I've got 2 lined up in the next few weeks, which I'm quite scared of because I've not done one for ages. But I just, even when we go up there, we just don't say anything. We just walk, and then you just sit, and it's like complete silence, and I just love it. I absolutely love like the silence, and being able to like appreciate the world, I suppose. Like I consciously try and do that, but I don't know if that's because it's one of these things. Like I've got 3 kids, a wife, a dog, a high pressure job. Like I'm forced.
Support Hibs.
Well, I'm forced into I'm forced into a lot of stuff by proxy, basically. You know what I mean? Like there's just stuff that I have to do constantly all the time. So I think I deliberately take the opportunity when I get it to completely detach myself from that. But I wonder if I was like the opposite of that, where I didn't have any of that, if I would be finding stuff to constantly keep myself busy. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a symptom of being so busy and not having a choice, that's why I'm so receptive to that kind of like just detaching, just sitting there and just being silent. Like I watch a telly, but sometimes I'd literally like just sitting reading books and comic books and stuff when I get the chance, but I very rarely do. So I it's just that appreciation that when I get it, it feels better. I suppose it's like a football analogy. Like if your team never wins anything and you finally do, it fucking feels 100 times better, as we know as Hibs fans. But imagine like if you're a Celtic fan or a Man City fan, doesn't it feel like you're just winning all the time? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's the same. I probably fits in with that lifestyle way of like take the opportunity and make it feels a lot better because you hardly get the chance. What about you, Matt?
I'm the same. So I had a conversation with my son Josh, who was saying that he hates having a day where he's not got anything on. And he's always like trying to arrange to see his pals, family, you know, all the rest of it, like just to keep himself busy. And I was like, I fucking love a day himself. You know, like it hardly ever happens, but I'm the same as you, Gordon. I'm quite happy just I could sit with the dog, just quiet. Didn't even need the TV on or that. You just sit, petting the dog for half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever, and have my thoughts through. You can sit and think about stuff, and sometimes that stuff is complete nonsense. Other times you're thinking about coping with stuff or like serious situations that you've got to either address or have addressed, and you're reflecting on how it's gone. Most often it's nothing that's going on, but I love it. I love a bit of time myself. Like you said, like just like taking the dog at a walk or going a walk myself. I go to the office at lunchtime. I make sure every lunchtime I'll go to the office if I'm not at home. I get some fresh air and a bit of, have my earphones in. Sometimes I you'll always have something playing, but just to feel like I can switch off for everything that's around about me and just have a bit of time just with myself. I really value that. I love it. And I like seeing people as well. But it's nice. Yeah, I do value that time where you can just do nothing and switch off.
These guys like people watching.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of curiosity.
Aye.
I fucking love people watching, eh?
I do. From a writing point of view, I think it's brilliant just watching, or even like sitting on the bus and listening to conversations, or when you're in a random place like cinemas, and before the film starts, you'll just hear random like people are just trying to fill that. And I'm probably a person that fills a silence, but sometimes you just hear like people are just talking shite for the sake of it. But yeah, I love like people watching, and you're just like, and from a writer's point of view, I'd be like that. So imagine what they were doing before this and what they're going to do after this. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, can you build a story around what you're seeing and stuff like that? And but I love it. What about you, mate?
Aye, big fan of it. The same, like, I tend to kind of go quite surreal places where folk can just always imagine them in a Vic and Bob sketch. Yeah, that's kind of where my head goes. So if you kind of catch a bit of conversation, just like what would be the surreal or ludicrous way for them to have got to this point in the conversation, or what would be the ridiculous answer that the person could give to the question that's just been asked. And that's kind of where my head goes with things like that when I'm.
See, I didn't create like scenarios or anything like that. I just watch. I just watch. I didn't try and like put on like what's like you can see someone in the distance and they're talking to each other, but you can't hear them, and then like some people in their head will put in the voices like he's saying that and he's saying that, and I'm like, I did any of that. I just watch them, and then I just take it all in, and I don't know. Like I had this conversation recently, and I think there was a study came out. I don't know if you've seen it about how there's people that didn't have an internal dialogue, and but so like I speak to my wife about it. I'm no, I didn't. I do have, so I can actively like speak in my head, but I don't consciously, like if I'm doing something or I'm thinking about something, I don't play it in my head. I just do it. You know what I mean? Like when I was speaking to someone at work and they were like, no, like if I'm doing something, I have to like kind of like talk it through in my head. Like they've got like, I think there's different levels in internal, but I wonder how those people rationalize stuff and things like that though. Like it does blows your mind really. How
it does.
It's funny. Kind of like I'll just keep referring to. But we were up in Aberdeen on Saturday. I gave Josh a lift home, and he raised that and said, "Kind of like there's folk that didn't have that the internal monologue or dialogue," and he says, "How do they rationalise it?" He said, the exact same question. How do they rationalise things, or how do they think about stuff? That's why it blew his mind. Is like how
it blows my mind
because I would say like even when I'm thinking about nothing, there's still there's still something going on there.
And if you don't have that, and then you start, but do you not then start? So if you don't have that internal dialogue, do you start thinking about it? Then you have it. Do you know what I mean? I think it's mad. Like I don't know.
It's like it's like daydreaming almost, like a permanent daydream. Stuff going on.
So right, for example, we're talking here, right, and you're waiting to say something. Have you do you say it in your head or say like what you're going to say in your head?
So what will generally happen there, right? If I think about it, is there'll be the words will start forming in my head. I'll have an idea of what I'm going to say, or there'll be something will trigger something like you'll say a word. And it happens a lot when I'm recording short bangers with Colin. That he'll say something, and immediately that'll trigger something in me that'll say, "Right, boom, go there with that." And it's almost like I still listen to him, but as I'm listening and taking it in, there's a whole part of my head that's going, "Here's where you can say next," and what would make that. Believe it or not, I think what would make it funny, right? And obviously that's subjective. Or like how would I switch that conversation around or make it take on a different path? All that sort of happens very quickly, but the words are all there at the same time as and sometimes the goal is just as quick because you might trigger something else with the next word that you say. But if I'm sitting listening, it's always I can't help it. Like I try to listen as intently as I possibly can and hear exactly what you're saying and take it in so that I can reply to what you've actually said and not what I hoped you've said or think you might have said. But there's just a wee bit of the brain just kind of does that. But I'll always be thinking of stuff.
How often do you? And I do it, and I like I'm quite a cheeky person, especially when I was younger. I was really cheeky, so I would be like knowing what I was going to say, and I'd probably be getting like slapped or folk for saying stuff like that, or like. But now I think I'm really good at. I know what I'm going to say, so I stop myself saying it, and I can visualize the conversation in my head, and I can't even think of like specifics of that. But when you're going to say something, you're like, if I say this could be quite cheeky, and I need
your
to
filter
like.
kicks in, Neil. That's what happens. Your filter kicks in and says, "Don't do it."
And I feel I'm quite smug in my cell, and folk are like they probably couldn't see it, but I'm like, I could have actually got in a lot of trouble for what I was going to say there. And it's even like at work or like with families or that, or another one is like social media and that as well, where you're typing something and it's like, I can actually see what's going to happen if I say this. I'm just going to leave it and then cancel it and then go back, and then nobody will ever know that thought. That, you know what I mean? And you're like, I'm quite chuffed with myself for that actually. But whereas I've not always had that filter, and it got me into like so much trouble. I was actually laughing about this the other day in my head, having like my internal dialogue. I can't remember how old I was. I must have been like 8-year-old. No, I was in primary 5 at school, however old you were then. So we were like, our class was next to the music class, and so we were all working away and stuff like that. And you could hear the teachers like doing the fucking piano shite and all that in the music class by herself playing away the piano.
Piano shite.
The piano shite. Well, this is where it's coming in. I've got the sweats think about it. So our teacher was like, "Oh, that music's really nice, eh?" And I went, "Nah, it's a load of rubbish." I just said it in front of the whole class, and I was like, and he goes, "Go and tell her that," in front of the whole class. And I went, "All right then." And this is what I did. So this was like, as I say, I was in primary 5. So I thought, right, I can go through, and that's the whole thing of me just like not having that filter. I could go through and tell her that her music's rubbish and I'm going to get in so much trouble. Do you know what I'm going to do instead? So I just left school. I just walked out of school. And I went AWOL. I went missing from school, and I got in so much fucking trouble. Like, honestly, I ran away from school because I didn't want to tell the teacher that the music was crap.
Rather than just not doing it.
I turned back up that night at like 8 o'clock, and it was like the most trouble I've ever been in. Like, when I was younger anyway. And then the following, I thought I got away with it. And I went back to school. There was a search party. The police and that were looking for me. And I went to like a shop in Leaf Walk and looked at film posters and comic books for ages. And I think I went to John Lewis. I'd never been to John Lewis during the week because I don't know why, but I remember it being a Thursday. So I went up to John Lewis and I kicked the book for ages. And then eventually, like, my pal seen me and he says, "Your mum's looking for you. You better go back." So I went back home, and I thought everything was all right. I got in trouble on that. I went to school, everything was all right, and the headmaster took me into his room and gave me the biggest bollocking ever. And I went back to my class in tears in front of everybody. So the moral of the story is, if you think the piano is shite, just keep it to yourself and don't say it. But I was thinking about it the other day, how much trouble did I used to get in for like trying to be that cheeky guy.
And your mum gets how do you say, "I'll slap that inner monologue out to you."
You're going to learn the fucking piano, by the way.
I know.
I think it shows
perfect comic timing as well that I says it. Just went absolutely nice, and I just went, "I think it's rubbish." I was just like, "Nah, why did I say that anyway?"
I think it shows though that you had, even at that age, that level of, I don't know if is it empathy? Would it be empathy that you didn't go and destroy that person's like confidence by saying that? Because I something right. I'm going to sound like a right evil fucking nasty bastard here, and folk are going to think I'm a nutter. But so there's been so many times in my life that, and it's genuine. It's generally with people that are like really nice. Like, the nicer the person is, the more I think in my head, what would happen here if I just stuck a head on you or punch you square in the puss?
Yeah.
But obviously I would never ever do it. So like, I went on a wee hang and I looked this up, and apparently it's like, it's completely natural to like think that way because I'm thinking it about, rather than me just thinking I'm going to punch you in the puss, I'm thinking about what would happen if I did that.
Yeah.
Like, what would the consequences be? And because I think it that way, and that's why I'm thinking it, is because I'm thinking about like, fucking hell, that'd be really bad and that would be really horrible. And this person's so nice. Like, if I did something really bad to them, fucking like, and then I think like, and I think that conditions me to yes, I fucking said it right, conditions. That does it so that I have that empathy, I think, or no, it's no empathy. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's help me.
Consideration.
I suppose it is. It's considering other people's like circumstances, feelings, and like if I did something bad to them or someone did something bad to them. But I like the fact that you had that filter and didn't do that, I think shows that you have that consideration for people. Whereas and I think that to me, even though I probably sound like an absolute nutter for even thinking that, again, never would ever do it. I think that kind of shows that I'm thinking in a weird way that I would consider their feelings. We'll just edit this whole fucking bit out that I just said there, right?
We'll leave it. I think that's a good point for us to wrap up, Gordon. I think that's and
this will be the last time you see me on Heidbangers.
Unless you're banging heads with somebody else. No, I think I think probably more folk than would admit it have those thoughts, Gordon. I don't think you're particularly unusual there.
Hi, I'm not thinking about like what would happen if I like tied them up and cut them a bits or something like that. Like, I'm just thinking like genuinely what would happen in this situation if I did something quite mad. I'm no sadistic.
No. Right, definitely on that note, we'll wrap up for the night. As always, get in touch with us if you listen, if you connect with anything that we've talked about, or if there's any topics that you'd like us to cover on the podcast. We'll be back probably in a couple of weeks' time as well with the next one. In the meantime, I'd encourage you to check out Gordon's excellent Twisting Your Melon podcast as well. Give you a wee plug there, Gordon.
Oh, thanks very much.
Well worth a listen. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we will see you next time.
Isn't that just the way? What's that you say?